Hello, folks. I wanted to record a really short video for you guys. This is the Theodicy and Trauma course. So I just wanted to record a little bit of a video for you um, and talk a little bit about trauma and the treatment for trauma and make sure that there's a good foundation. I know that we're going to talk a little bit about the theology pieces of that. I want us to have a really good discussion about that when we meet um, in our um, in our meeting in March. But there's a couple of things that I want to make sure that you have that are foundational for treating trauma. And so I feel like probably having these short snippets of videos will be very helpful for you. And hopefully you'll be able to get some things out of it. I know that you've been doing a lot of reading in your trauma textbook, which is an excellent resource. And some of the things that I'm going to go over are also in that textbook, but I want to make sure they're so important that I want to make sure that you guys get them and it's well explained. So this first video that I want to make sure that the information from this first video that I want to make sure that you get are the stages of trauma treatment. So the names that we have for the stages may be a little bit different than what's in your textbook, but I'm going to give you these names and then, but basically the information in each one of them is the same. So when we think about trauma treatment, we divide trauma treatment into three different stages. The very first stage of trauma treatment is de-escalation. So in this de-escalation stage, what happens is that we've got a client that's coming in and they're in some sort of fight, flight, freeze, fawn space. So they're either in them currently, like they're continually demonstrating fight, flight, freeze, fawn reactions in your office, or they're continually struggling with these reactions. They're being triggered in everyday activities, whether it's at work or at home, in the environment, going to the movies, that sort of thing. They're being triggered by something, environmental cues that are then causing them to go into either a hyper vigilant state or hypo state. And so and I want to talk a little bit about what those two different states are, but what we've got is someone that can't really control the reactions that they're having to these environmental triggers. And so they might be environmental triggers, they might be like sounds that they are here. Everything is usually sensory in some way. It's something that they hear, something that they see, something they smell, taste, or experience, feel. And so we're wanting to make sure that we're kind of catching this. And so in this particular stage, what we want to do is help give them coping mechanisms or coping skills to help calm their body down. This is called de-escalation. So it's not just in the office where they're coming in where we're working to settle their body, but it's also that they are able to use these skills in their everyday situations so that they become good at knowing, oh, wait, I can control this. I have some control over what to do when these triggers happen. So in that de-escalation stage, we're spending a lot of time helping them understand what is happening to their bodies when they're triggered. Most of the time they come in, they don't understand why they're being triggered. They don't understand that it's a normal response to situations that they've been in before. They don't know that these were adaptive coping skills that they had that to help them manage the trauma that they went through in the past, or the trauma that they may have currently gone through. So they don't realize that the reason that their body is going through these reactions is because it has learned that in similar situations, these coping mechanisms are the way to stay safe. And so all coping mechanisms, it doesn't matter what they are, every coping mechanism, including anger, um, when you come from a trauma perspective, anger, addictions, anxiety, dissociation, anything that you can think of, panic attacks, all of these reactions that they're having are healthy coping mechanisms that they learned that kept them safe. So we do not want to take away any coping mechanism that they have until we can give them something different. Okay, so we're wanting to make sure that we can teach them new coping mechanisms. So what we're going to work on in this de-escalation stage is being able to teach them deep breathing. We're going to teach them things like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, which I can give all of you information on these if you don't know what they are. So like things like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, where we look around and go, what are 5 things that you see? What are 4 things that you hear? What are 3 things that you can touch? What are 2 things that you smell? What is 1 thing that you can taste? So, I mean, you can, there's sometimes that I go through and I mix those up. So that's not really the issue or the point. But the thing is that we're going through all 5 senses and we're working to ground the individual into the present. Okay. So what we're wanting to do is help them to be present so that they're not getting triggered into the past situations that they've been into or been in. And their body doesn't think that they're in some sort of danger. So we help them to learn to de-escalate. This can take anywhere from a couple of weeks to years, depending on the where the person is coming in at. And so if they are aware of their body triggers, if they're aware of the connection between emotions and body and our thinking, then we have a little bit, it will take a less time. But if they're not aware, so sometimes their bodies are shut down, they may be experiencing emotions, but then they don't know how the body is connected to the emotions, which are connected to the thoughts. And so they don't know this interconnection that's always going on. And so if their bodies if they don't have awareness of what's going on in their thinking, their body, and their emotions, then we have to help them get awareness to that before we can actually do the de-escalation. There's a couple of really great resources for this, so that I will make sure that I have connected you guys to. So we're wanting to think about it from a standpoint of de-escalation is helping them decrease their triggers, decrease their fight, flight, freeze, fawn response, help them to recognize when they're distressed or when they're in one of those states. Help them to recognize when they're hyper aroused. Hyper aroused is when they're in that panic, anger. Everything is kind of over here in this, like they have all of this extra um, uh, energy and they're reacting outwardly. That's your hyper aroused. Your hypo aroused is when they turn inward and they shut down. So this is when you have someone that is dissociated. And so, and we all dissociate, like we all do this all the time. So for example, I do want, if our football players were to go out on a football field and they were not to be hyper in there with the adrenaline and all of that going on with their cortisol levels up. If they weren't in that state, they would not be good football players when they went on the field. So we need them to be in this hyper aroused state when they go out on the football field. However, if they were using that same aroused state in school, then they're not going to be able to think clearly. They're not going to be able to answer clearly. They're not going to um, be able to talk about what they feel, what they need, what they're thinking. Okay, so the hypo aroused is when kind of like I don't know if you guys have been. I'm assuming that everybody has done this, but if you go driving and you're tired or you're stressed and some way somehow you make it from point A to point B and you're like, I do not even remember how I got from point A to point B. I was not even present with what was going on. I know I probably stopped at all the red lights because I drive this way thousands of times, but I don't know, I got from point A to point B. That's a dissociated state, not a great driving state. That's not an awareness state, but we do it all the time because we're exhausted. Maybe we've got some things going on that are stressing us out, and so we're not paying attention. And so when that happens, that is a normal dissociated state that everybody experiences. Well, what happens is that sometimes people are triggered and they go into this shutdown state, this dissociated state, and they don't realize that they're there. They don't know why they went there. They can't explain it. Sometimes they go from anywhere from being kind of just flat, not really present, to all the way to this, what we might consider, like if we're on a continuum over here on this other end of having parts where they have a dissociated identity disorder, and or some sort of dissociative state that we're over here, and even within dissociative identity disorder, DID, there is like a continuum of what is considered moderate or mild, moderate, and severe. So there's lots of continuums in these spaces. So we're wanting to kind of understand that there can be mixed states where they might be dissociated, but also, maybe hyper aroused. And so those mixed states are very difficult because our body has just kind of gone into these spaces where we're trying, it doesn't know what to do. And so anyway, so I want you to understand that our goal in this first stage is to help their bodies to calm, help them to be aware of their emotions, help them to be aware of how when they feel a certain way, when they feel sad, where do they feel that in their body? When they feel angry, where do they feel that in their body? We kind of give them verbiage for all of their emotions. They might use a feelings wheel or a chart that might have feelings on there. So we're wanting to make sure that we have all that information and that they have that information. They have safe places. We've helped them create safe places. We use a lot of imagery in this space. So we have that first stage where we're helping them to calm down, we're becoming more aware of their emotions, their thinking, and their body. Now, the part that most people think about when they think about trauma counseling is actually this middle part that's called reprocessing. So in this middle part where we go back into the traumas and we begin to reprocess, we might use models such as EMDR, we might use trauma-focused CBT, we might use a model of therapy that is probably not as well known, but that is pretty well known in this particular area, which is called story-informed trauma therapy. And so that is called the SIT is the acronym for that. We might use some polyvagal theory with them. And so like we've got all these different models of therapy that we can use in this reprocessing stage, but this is when we go back into the trauma. We use our what we taught them in this the settling or the de-escalation stage over here. We're helping them to settle. We're going to help them use the skills that we've taught them in this first stage in the second stage. And the second stage can last, it just kind of depends on the trauma they've been through. If it's only been one major trauma, then it might not last very long. If they've been through multiple traumas, complex PTSD, any sort of developmental trauma, then in that space, we might be there for years. We don't know. It just kind of depends on where they're at. And so we want to help them keep one foot in the present, one foot in the past, and be able to use those coping skills to reprocess what's happened. We want to go back into that space. We want to help them remember that they're present. It's not happening again. And we're going to help them process through and make sure we understand what they're thinking or what is the meaning that they gave to these situations. We want to understand what beliefs they hold based on these particular traumas. We want to help them restructure that. And then we go into this third stage, and this is a reintegration stage. So we're taking everything that we reprocessed, all of the new cognitions that we might have, all of the new ways of managing and thinking about the sensory inputs that we've been triggered by before. We're going to take them into this reintegration stage, and we're going to begin to look at, boundaries. We're going to look at going into the world and applying what they learned into those relationships, and maybe family relationships, that sort of thing. And so, to be really honest, a lot of people start in stage one and they don't make it to stage two because they're like, I'm good. I feel it's taken a while to do stage one, and I feel so much better. I don't need stage two. That's up to them. Some people go stage one, stage two, and then they don't do the reintegration stage. That's okay too. We just are coming in at wherever we come into and helping them get through that stage that we find them in and move on. One of the things that I want to really caution is that many people jump right into that stage two of reprocessing, and we cannot reprocess until we've taught them how to be safe. So that's really, really important. We can talk a little bit more about that later, but hopefully this is helpful. And I will come to you with other thoughts and ideas and answers to some questions a little bit later. Have a great day.